Some rural hospitals are being used to set up big paydays from insurance providers, raising questions about how insurance claims are reimbursed. Since 2010, 83 struggling rural hospitals have closed. Nearly 700 others are at risk of closing in the next decade. But a CBS News investigation found some rural hospitals have become hugely profitable because insurance providers reimburse them at a much higher rates. Jim Axelrod is here with how healthcare executives are now cashing in. Jim, good morning.
Good morning. Buying a struggling rural hospital might not seem like the best bet for a business venture, but we've found these out-of-the-way hospitals have become gold mines for enterprising healthcare executives looking to quietly make a quick buck. On a hilltop in rural North Georgia, Chastity Regional, a 49-bed hospital, has been operating for more than 40 years.
You know, Chastity, that's where I was born.
So it's got a place in your heart.
It does. It does.
Kelly Smallwood worked there for 13 years, most recently in the billing department. Chastity's owners had been trying to unload it for more than 3 years, until the summer of 2016, when a man from Florida named Aaron Doral showed up and offered to buy it for $15 million.
And when you heard that, what did you think?
The number itself, it set off an alarm. Why would someone from Florida come up here and pay $15 million for a hospital sitting on a hill?
It just didn't smell right to Smallwood, so she did some research into the new owner.
What did you find out?
He owned a lab in Florida called Reliance Laboratories.
What else had he done professionally?
He was also an attorney.
Have you, a friend, or a loved one been injured in a serious car accident, medical malpractice, slip and fall, or on the job?
Had he ever run a hospital before?
No.
Right after the sale, Smallwood says Doral moved part of the billing operation to Florida, and huge checks from insurance companies started to roll in, some as large as $500,000.
Chastity has never, in 13 years I've been there, has never received a check like that from any insurance company.
Records showed the money was being paid out for drug screens, toxicology tests on urine samples collected from all over the country. Some of the testing was conducted at Doral's lab, Reliance, in Sunrise, Florida, near Fort Lauderdale. But everything was billed through Chastity Regional Hospital.
Their reimbursement rate is a lot higher with our contracts. On a $1,500 claim, we would get reimbursed right at almost $1,000.
And if they were run through the lab, do you have any idea what they would end up getting?
Nothing extravagant like Chastity would get on their reimbursement.
Insurance providers reimburse rural hospitals like Chastity at much higher rates to keep healthcare in those communities. Those higher rates are also making Aaron Doral a lot of money. Documents show Doral's lab made $67 million billing tests through another rural hospital in Graceville, Florida. A similar deal Doral made with a hospital in Northern California has generated more than $31 million in the last 8 months. And last year, Doral bought 2 more rural hospitals in Georgia and Alabama. After he bought Chastity, Smallwood started getting complaints from patients.
I started getting an influx of calls.
Patients from Georgia.
No, these patients are not from Georgia. These patients are from all over the United States, Texas, Vermont, West Virginia.
I knew what they were doing right from the get-go.
Which was what?
They were defrauding my insurance company.
On the other end of one of those phone calls was Sonia Reibel of Tyler, Texas. She happens to know a thing or two about lab tests.
I've been a lab tech since I was about 19 years old.
So you know how this works?
Oh, yes. And I also do the lab's billing where I work, and I've been doing it for the past 10 years as well.
In December 2016, Chastity Regional in Georgia started billing her insurance $2,700 a pop for drug tests on her son who was in a rehab in Michigan.
I've never been to Georgia to a hospital. My kids have never been to Georgia.
How often are you getting these $2,700 charges?
Almost every other day.
So what was the total?
Close to $20,000.
Just in the analysis of the urine sample?
Yes.
Those kinds of bills disturbed Kelly Smallwood. After months of voicing her concerns to multiple supervisors, she quit.
I turned my notice in on March the 19th of 2017. When I turned my notice in, I did not have a job lined up. I had had enough.
Kelly, wouldn't the easy thing to have done just to have kept your mouth shut and just keep doing work the way you were asked to do it?
Right's right and wrong is wrong. That's not how I was raised. If you're going to do something, you need to do it right and you need to do it truthfully.
We wanted to ask Aaron Doral about all this, but he declined multiple requests for an on-camera interview.
Jim Axelrod, CBS.
And declined to speak with us when we showed up at his lab in South Florida in person.
I'd like to ask you a question about Chastity Hospital, Mr. Doral.
As for Sonia Reibel, after numerous calls to Chastity Regional, the hospital finally admitted they had no records or test results for her son.
Let's say you're sitting halfway across the country watching this story. Why should you care?
You better care because it's going to affect your insurance. Because next year, all the insurance companies are going to look at how much they've lost and how much they've paid out, and they're going to adjust your premium to accommodate it. They're not going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it.
In an email, Doral said all testing at the rural hospitals you mentioned is properly billed. Last month, Anthem sent a letter to the hospital Doral contracted with in California, alleging $13 million had been improperly billed. The hospital disputes the allegations, but has temporarily suspended the lab program.
Kelly Smallwood is one vigilant hospital worker.
Yeah.
Jim, generally, are these kinds of lab arrangements legal?
Well, of course, that depends on whom you ask. So the insurance companies say it's fraudulent. The people running the lab program say everything is above board. One thing we do know for sure, the amount of disputed claims across the country, $260 million.
Wow.
It shows you need to check the paperwork. Does Mr. Doral know how to get in touch with you? When he was,
We've certainly made it abundantly clear what our
he didn't try to run you over, but I would think maybe he'd want to talk to you a little later today. He got some splaining to do.
Jim,
Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Very interesting.